Hello everyone, I'm Zishansha and welcome to Zinteractive. Now as you know how polygonal models and NURBS models are being made, now let's see how to prepare textures and shaders for our models. So this is basically like to prepare a paint or a texture to apply on any kind of an object. So let's see how to do this in this lesson 9.
Yeah man, we're painting to paint our objects in Maya. Yeah man, look, whoa!
Oh my god.
Now as we know how to model with the polygonal modeling and with the NURBS modeling, once you have your model ready, the next thing you want to do is to apply textures on it. So in this section, we will learn how to apply textures, how to create textures on our material. So basically, first we will learn how to create materials and how to create textures. And then in the next session, we will learn how to apply those. Before going forward, the first thing that we need to see is that Maya have a rendering option. Rendering is very important when it comes to the materials and the lighting, because Maya have plenty of renders and each render have a different kind of light setup and different kind of materials and shaders. So that's why the rendering option is very important. So first let's go to the rendering options. So here is your rendering option. So we can click here with the shortcut and it will be open. So another way to open the rendering setting, you can go to the Windows and then we can go to the rendering editor, and here you have the rendering settings. So you can click here or from the shortcut. So I prefer to click on the shortcut because it's very quick. Now the frontier setting here is the render using. This is the frontier setting. Why? Because it gives you the list of render that Maya has. So Maya have a kind of built-in renderers, and you can also install third-party renderers, like you can install a V-Ray on it, you can install RenderMan on it. But at this moment, because it's I have the default renders which comes with the Maya 2020. The first one here, you can see the Maya software. Pretty much it uses the software of Maya to render. Then you have Maya hardware, it uses the hardware of the render. And then we have Arnold renderer. Arnold renderer gives you a photorealistic result. That's why a lot of people prefer to use Arnold renderer. So we will get to the Arnold rendering when we will move to the rendering settings. But first we will see about how the Maya software renderer works. So if you click on the software renderer, so you will see the settings here are basically Maya software rendering settings. So you have the common settings, which is pretty much common for all the renderers, like size and everything. So once we will move to the rendering parts, we will go in detail. And notice if I move to any other, suppose Maya hardware, so things quite changes. Okay, if I move to Arnold renderers, so a lot of things changes. Okay, so we have a new tab here, Arnold renderer, we have system, we have AOVs, and we have diagnosis. So every renderer have its own setup. So it all works differently whenever you are switching from a different render to a different render. Let's move to the Maya software right now, and we will keep it as it is. Okay, and we will not change anything here. Now to render the scene, simply what we need to do is that we have to go to the render setting. Okay, so we can go to the open render view, or directly we can like render the current frame. So if I click here, render the current frame, it will render using Maya software renderer. So if I click here, so you will notice that it renders using the Maya software renderer. If I want to change it from Maya software to Arnold, simply I can go to the renderer here. Okay, then renders like settings here, here, and then I will choose the Arnold renderer. And after that, what I need to do is that I have to click the IPR, which will render the current frame. And IPR basically is the interactive photorealistic renderer. So if I click over here, so you will notice that the result is quite changed. It is not same as it was giving me when I used Maya software. So it's quite realistic, photorealistic. Okay, not 100%, but much more better than what Maya software were using. Okay, so I will switch back to the Maya software, and then I will keep it as it is. So I'll keep it to Maya software, and then I will stop the rendering from here, and I will close. Now let's see what Maya software have as a materials. Okay, so what Maya has is basically in the rendering settings. So you can see there are different shortcuts of the materials. These materials, if you want to apply, there are different ways to do that. The first way is that you can select any of the object on which you want to apply the material, like suppose for in this case this one. If I right click over here, and I can go to apply existing material if there is any material available, or a favorite material if you have your own favorite materials, or assign a new material. Okay. One other way to do that is you have to simply go here, change your settings from modeling to rendering. Okay, and you will get the lighting and shading. You can simply go to the lighting, shading, and then from here as well you can select assign new material or favorite or existing. So this is another way. So I have, but I don't want to use that. I will keep it modeling, and I can simply use from these. So let's see one by one, what do we have? Let me turn on my object mode from here. So first we will look into Maya software renderers shaders. Okay, so we have here a lot of different kind of shaders here. So the first one we will apply on this teapot is basically the Lambert. Now as soon I will click on the Lambert, and if I will go to my attribute editor, you will see here I have Lambert 2, because Lambert 1 is by default already applied whenever you create a file, so always it will be Lambert 2. Now Lambert 2 material, if you will see here, is basically a very flat sort of material, a very matte sort of material, like a paper. It does not have any kind of shine or anything here. Okay, so suppose if I simply click here, so I will get the same material on my screen. Okay, let me a little bit zoom into this teapot, so you can clearly see what kind of result I am having. So the result you can see from here as well, or from here. So the first thing that you see on the screen is the color. So I can change any color I want, like suppose I can change it to blue. Okay, and you will notice that it becomes blue, and here as well you can see that it is blue. Okay, other than that I have transparency. If I turn on the transparency on and off, you can see it will become a little bit see-through. Okay, so that you can do as well. Then you have ambient color. Basically what is the ambient color? If you try to increase or decrease the ambient color, you can see it is becoming more brighter. So if you want that object to be having an effect, if you want to put an effect on the object that it is in a lit room instead of in a dark room, and you don't want to create lights, so from here you can adjust. You can change it, because right now it is white, so you can change it to something else. Okay, then you have like certain other like options here. You have diffuse, you have translucence, which works on the translucency, and so many other things you have here. Now apart from the Lambert material, we have another material which is known as Blinn. Now I will select my next depot here and go on my shelf, okay, and I will see here this one is known as the Blinn material. Now if I click on the Blinn material, you can see also there are some highlights shown in these icons on the shelf, so you can see what will be your final result. So basically I have my Blinn material here. Let me change the color so it will become a little bit easier to view. Now you will notice that this material has like highlights, okay, unlike the Lambert, because Lambert is a flat material and the Blinn is not a flat material. It have different kind of settings here, and one of the setting here is specular shading. Now you have here specular shading and you can see speck. Now reason you can see these specks, these highlights, because there are two lights, one on the left, one on the right, so that's why you can see those. If you don't have lights, you will not see this kind of result, okay. So you can see the result from here, or suppose if you have your viewport 2 turned on, you can see that. If you're using Arnold, you can turn on the Arnold, but I will keep it viewport 2 because I'm using my software. So here I can control my my specular, okay. You can see that how the specular is becoming bigger and smaller, and then the roll off. So these kind of settings you can change, okay. So you have the eccentricity, which changes the highlight like size of it, okay. This one, roll off, it's kind of intensity of your specular, okay. And then you have specular color, you can change that. If you have a reflectivity on your object, you can change the reflectivity from here as well. So different kind of settings you can do here. And just notice it is different than Lambert, because when you switch from a different material to another material, from one shader to another shader, every shader has its own setting, okay. So all these materials have its own settings, and they are different from each other depending on what kind of material you're applying on it. So this have different settings, other have different settings. So let's go to the next one. Now here what I will do is that simply I will apply another material which is known as the Phong E. Now Phong E, you will notice that this is the Phong E. As soon as I will click on the Phong E, I can get the Phong E material here. And notice that how the specularity is different than the Blinn material, okay. So if I change its color so that so it will become a little bit more easier for you to see, okay. So you can see that it is the highlight here, it's a little bit different. And when you go to the settings, instead of the eccentricity and specular roll off, we have here roughness and highlight size. Now what is the roughness? Just notice here or here, if I increase the roughness, okay, so it becomes more matte style, or if I decrease it, it becomes more specular style, okay. So basically it is the roughness of the specular, and if I change this, it becomes smaller and bigger. This is the highlight size. So if you want to create something which have a specular but very rough specular, more like a matte plastic or silk type of material, okay, so for these kind of things you can use the roughness and you can adjust these roughness. Now in the end I will apply the material which is anisotropic. Now here is the anisotropic. So if I click on the anisotropic, you will notice that this material have a different kind of highlight. This highlight you can see here is basically in a direction. It's not like a spot, it's coming in a direction. So if you will see over here, let me change the color and let me move this one kind of here, so it can be in the light itself, because the light itself is not reaching. Okay, but never mind, we can fix it later on, or we can see the result here as well. Okay, so here the highlight have like a straight direction. It's unlike the Blinn or Phong. It's not a spot like a highlight. It's not a spot specular. You can change the angle of it. Like if you notice here how it is changing, I can make it vertical. Okay. Also, I can spread it less or more if I want it. Like you can see here clearly, if I'm decreasing it or increasing, some changes is happening here as well. Okay, and I have a Y, so now you can see things are appearing on my teapot. Before it wasn't, but now it's appearing here. Now you can clearly see what's going on. So if I rotate this, you can see that how it is rotating accordingly and how it is affecting my teapot here. So basically this can be a good like a material for brush metal and those kind of things. So you can increase the roughness. Okay, and you know, you have the Fresnel index, so you can change the Fresnel index as well. So many different kind of settings you can do over here. So just see, we have these materials. We have Lambert, which is more like a paper sort of material with no kind of shading on it. Then we have Blinn, which is like a sharp or soft spot specular, so you can change it as you want. Then we have here the Phong, so you can add roughness to it. Then we have Anisotropic. It has an angular, a directional specular over here, so you can change all these. So this is how different kind of materials have their own settings. So now, as you know how the Maya software material works, let's jump into Arnold materials and see how the Arnold material works. Now, Arnold have its own materials. Okay, so if you will want to apply anything on our teapot or any object as a Arnold material, what we need to do is simply is that, because right now you can see the Lambert is applied on it. Simple, what I need to do, I have to right click here and assign new material. As soon as I will do that, I will get this option on my screen. Now if I want to apply anything related to Maya software, I have here surface. I can use Lambert, Phong or Blinn, whatever I want. Okay, but at this stage, I don't want to apply Maya, I want to apply Arnold. So I will click on the Arnold and I will search for AI standard surface. This is the surface shader, so I will apply this one on it. As soon as I will apply, you will notice that there is a material applied on it, which is an Arnold material. You can see A over here. Okay, now to see the result, it is always better to do the interactive photorealistic rendering, okay, which is the IPR. Now Arnold IPR, you can go in the Arnold and you can find over here, or you can go to the Arnold shelf and click on this I here, which is the Arnold render preview. So here I have this preview, okay, which is coming from the different camera. Okay, so if I will turn this on, I just have to press play button here, and it will be interactively changing my rendering as I will be changing the settings over here. So that's a good thing about the interactive photorealistic rendering. It's keep on updating when you are changing. Okay, so I'm using two different cameras, and this one is a rendering perspective shape 1 camera, not the perspective shape camera. So the view over here is the perspective shape camera, not shape 1. So I can clearly zoom in to see what's going on here. Now let's see what do we have in Arnold Shader. In Arnold Shader, the first thing that we have is the weight. Weight, you can say it's like a strength or an intensity of these settings. So there are a lot of different settings. We have base settings, we have specular settings, we have transmission, a lot. And each one of these, if you will notice that, have a weight. So weight is basically the strength or the intensity of these. Suppose I want to reduce the intensity of the base, so I have to reduce it from the weight. If I want to reduce the specularity, the intensity of the specularity, I will reduce the weight. Other than this, you can mix and match all the weight of these separate like settings. Suppose subsurface I want this, then 1 or 1.5, then 0.6. So this is basically an average also. So you can see this is like an averaging setting also. It works on the average as well. So at this stage, I have like a white color applied. Okay, and you can see this is not 100% white because the weight is 8. So if I will increase the weight to something around 1, so you can see it has become a little bit more brighter. Okay, I can change the color, and as soon as I will change the color, you will see that it is changing. Let me put something like a light color here. Okay, so this is much better, and as soon as I do that, quickly it changes here. Okay, now we have here diffuse like a diffuse roughness. So if I increase or decrease the diffuse roughness, so whatever material is beneath, whatever the shader is beneath this, its roughness will change. Like notice what happens if I increases the diffuse roughness. As I will increase it, you can see that it becomes a little bit darker. So whatever is beneath, its roughness changes. So I will keep it as it is. Metalness, by the name you can guess, it increases the metalness of your material. Okay, you can another thing is that it can act like a reflectivity also. Like metal is what? Metal have a reflectivity. So if I will turn it on 100%, means like 1, it will become 100% reflective, just like a chrome. I can decrease it, so it will become, you know, partially reflective, and you can see a little bit reflection of the base here, lights reflection. Okay, but in this case I don't want that. I want to keep it 0. So that's pretty much about the metalness. Now in the specularity, here you have the specular color, the weight of it. I will keep the specular around something like 1. Then you have roughness. 0.2 is by default. Now what is the roughness basically? Roughness is the like the quality of your highlights. Okay, at this point it is 0.2, which means not too sharp and not too rough. If I increase it, you can see that it is hard to see. The material looks like it has become like a matte material instead of a shiny ceramic or glossy material. So specularity actually changes the look and feel of your material. If you want something look like a glossy or a ceramic sort of thing, so you will keep it lower. Okay, if you want to make it look more shiny and more glossy, okay, so you can decrease it more and more. Okay, so basically what it is the look and feel of your materials. Like specularity helps a lot to create a look and feel of your material. Okay, so that's why it's very important, you know, like a setting. So suppose if I will go completely to 1, I cannot see that. Actually, it is not transparent. It didn't become it didn't become transparent. What happened is that I increased this too much that it becomes so huge that it is not visible to my eyes. Okay, so that's why I cannot see it. So if I reduce it, you can see that it's keep on coming back and back and back, and then I can now see it. Similarly, if I start reducing it and go back to around something like 0, so you can see it becomes too sharp. But I will keep it 0.2, which is the default value. Now IOR is basically index of refractivity. So index of refractivity works on those objects that have refraction, but this object does not have refraction. So when we will move to the transparency, then we'll learn how we can apply the index of refractivity. Okay, then we have anisotropic. Anisotropic, same thing as we have checked in the Maya software materials like anisotropic material. If I increase it, you can see that it is becoming flatter and flatter. You can see that how flat it becomes, like, you know, like a thin line basically. Okay, so if I reduce the now the roughness, so the highlight becomes a little bit more. Okay, and then I can change the rotation. You know, like if I want to rotate it something like 0.25, so it will rotate to the 90 degrees or 180 degrees if you want to do so. You have to go to something like this. So this is how you can change the rotation. Okay, so I don't want this, or I don't want this, and go back to the normal settings. Now here you have other things like transmission. Is basically it turns your material into a transmitting material, means like a little bit like, you know, you will have a transparency in your materials. Then you have surface, you have like a secondary layer. It gives you like a suppose if you're working on a wax or a skin, so you have a secondary material like a underneath skin, which is like an epidermal skin or something. So for those purposes you use that. So it scatters the light around that you know, the skin or that part or that layer underneath. So for the wax, for skin, it's very good materials. Okay, so you can explore all these. There are a lot, and you can explore all of these and see how it works. Coat is basically, if you will apply coat, it will give you a secondary specularity on it. So it is good material if you want to create a car paint shader or shaders that have multiple layers of specularity. Okay, sheen is good if you want to make something like a silk or a velvet cloth or a cotton. So basically you turn off the specularity and you work on the sheen. Emission is quite interesting. Right now the weight is 0. That means there is no intensity, like there is no strength here. So if I will increase it, notice that like this is a white color. Emission allow my material to emit light. So if I start increasing, you can see that it starting to emit light. And notice on the ground how it is emitting the light. I can change the color to it. Okay, whatever color I want, and notice that the color which I changed here, it is emitting that color as a light as well. So emission is a quite interesting. You can create neon lights with it and so many other things, you know, with it. And just you can do experiments with all these and see what they are for. So let me undo that. I think I undo it a lot, and then I bring back my specularity to 0.2. Now suppose if you want to make your material transparent, the same one that we were using right now. So how we can make it transparent? To make it transparent, what we need to do is simply we can go to our geometry down, because in like in the AI standard surface shader, you will see a geometry, and inside the geometry you have the opacity. Okay, so right now your opacity is basically like here at this part. So if I reduce it, you can see that it is becoming transparent. Okay, you can see that it's becoming transparent, and that's how you can make your object transparent, and this is how it works. Okay, but one thing really important that you have to make sure is that you have to select your material, and once you have selected the material, it will, like your object. So once your object is selected, you will see here your object, and inside your object setting you will see Arnold. Inside the Arnold, you have to make sure you have these settings on. Suppose I have this opaque on. If I turn off the opaque, okay, so I will still have the settings here, but actually what it's doing is that it is making it more opaque. So I will keep it off right now. Okay. The result will affect when I will apply the refractivity on it. That's why I don't want to keep it. Okay. If you don't want to apply refractivity, then it's okay. Otherwise, the refractivity won't work. So I can go simply back to my AI shader. Now, if I go at the top, okay, so after the opacity, I will go to my transmission over here. Okay, before going to the transmission, what I can do is that let's make like a material here, sorry, an object here. The reason I'm doing is that so that I can see the refractivity, like the refraction through this teapot. Okay, so now I can go in my AI shader. Now here you will notice that I have IOR. Okay, but there is no refraction at this stage. The reason is that because there is no transmission. So as long I don't have any transmission on it, I cannot see refractivity, and the refractivity setting is here, IOR. So basically opacity, transmission, and index of refractivity, IOR, all these three things works together. So now if I will turn on my weight of the transmission, you will see it will become highly refractive. Now notice I have changed it to 0.93. See how it is now. Okay, suppose if I increase it more, so you will see it is becoming more and more transparent. Okay, now you are not able to see the refraction clearly right now because the refraction at this stage, the one that we are using, is basically 1.5, which is quite a neutral one. Let me do one more thing here. Let me change the color of it so it becomes a little bit clear for you to see. Okay, let me make it white. Okay, and opacity, I think it is too much, so we can little bit increase the opacity so it's not too transparent. Okay, now index of refraction right now is 1.5, which as I told you is basically more like a kind of a neutral index of refraction. So if I zoom here, okay, you can see this cylinder behind my teapot. If I change this one, like suppose if I increase my index of refraction to something like this, okay, notice how the settings changes here. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me increase it more and more. Okay, and I will take a snapshot, like a snapshot of it, so we can compare our settings. And if I will reduce it something like this to 0, completely 0 or something here. And then take a snapshot of it. And then if I will make move it back to 1.5 and then take a snapshot of it. Okay, now let's compare all these. This is 1.5. Okay, this one is with the lowest index of refraction, and see how you can see the highlights here, how you can see this like the far behind one is refracting all around, and how the specularity and the lights around it is acting. This one is the highest value one, and see how it is like more clear, and there is no atmosphere everywhere, no lights acting around it. So you can compare both of them together. What I can do is that I can turn this one to sec A and I can turn this to sec B, and I can simply move and see between these two settings. Okay, so you can see with the lowest index of refraction how this is, and with the highest index of refraction how this is. Okay, so this is pretty much, you can make a transparent material. You have to make sure it is opaque. Okay, it is not opaque, or it can be opaque. If I turn on the opaque, it won't change it a lot, you know. The reason is that, let me move back here and remove these. In the older version of Maya, the changes were very intense. It was harsh changes if you turn it on or off. Here you don't see a lot of changes, but it do affect. Okay, so you can turn it off, and then you can work on the index of, like, you know, opacity from here. Then you can work on the transmission from here, and you have a lot of different settings here. You can check all of these one by one how it is working. Okay, and then you can work on the index of refractivity. So this is how you can easily work with all these three settings and create a transparent material. So this is the end of section A of tutorial materials and shaders. Okay, so you have learned more about how materials and shaders are being made. We will learn more in the part B in the next class. Okay, so in the next lesson we will move to part B, and we will see more of the things in the part B.